afternoon, everybody. Okay, going to touch on the food and beverage services sectors, which actually mainly the restaurants, like those directly selling to the consumer directly. Okay, just now, I think some question we need to answer. First is, what is the F&B value chain? Okay, this I will cover it later on. Second, how much does household spend on F&B? Third, what is the performance of F&B services sectors? Remember, the F&B is a total sectors, as Jeff just now mentioned. I only focus on the services sectors. What are the risks of F&B services sectors? What is the outlook for these sectors? And what success factor to look for in an F&B service company? Okay, the value chain, as Jeff mentioned earlier, we have the raw material, then the wholesale, the processing, then this will be the one that I'm touching on, the retail and F&B services. Okay, these are the companies. I think Jeff has made a good summary. I just skip. Okay, first I'll touch on the spending and the stage of development in the economy for the F&B. Okay, according to World Bank survey, consumer spending for 210 of 92 developing countries, about 39% of their spending out of 3.8 trillion was spent on F&B. Whereas based on the OECD database, the EU, the 28 EU countries spend about 1.3 trillion euro, or 16% of their total consumptions in F&B. Singapore, even less. We only spend 9%. Does it mean that we are poorer? Actually, no. In fact, we are richer. When you get richer and richer, you spend less and less in your food and beverage because of our escalating car, property, or whatsoever. So actually the food and beverage, when the economy develops, they spend less and less. That's why in Singapore, our spending is only 9% of our household spending. Okay, and volatility, how much the F&B spending changes when economic situation change. Okay, using data from the Singapore data, total consumer spending, the volatility is about 3.3%. That means year by year, it will changes by 3.3%. Whereas our F&B changes only 1.5%. That is half. That means when our spending get lesser, we actually didn't spend proportionally lesser in F&B. Actually, we spend relatively more in terms of proportions. That means we don't cut our F&B as much as other consumer products if our expenditure or our income drop. Okay, data from EU have similar finding. Their fluctuation in the consumer spending is 3.1%, while their F&B is 2.4%, which means just now I mentioned Singapore, in fact, being one of the more advanced economy, we actually spend much less in F&B, and the volatility or the changes in the year-to-year spending actually is much less, which means that this spending on F&B is relatively more stable. Singapore even less volatile than EU. Okay, performance in the F&B services company. Okay, we can see that based on the chart, the F&B services company, actually the earnings start dropping from the 2008 to 2014. Although the volatility is quite high, we use a moving average. Actually, it shows that the trend is dropping. Okay, in terms of performance, ROE performance is one of the worst. Of the 15 sectors, is the second lowest. I'll explain what's the reason later. In terms of volatility, is higher. That means the earnings of the ROE of F&B companies is much volatile. It contradicts with just now I said revenue is relatively stable. Then why the earnings is that volatile? Okay, the main reason, because of cost. You look at the revenues of the F&B. So that is this line. Is relatively stable. Whereas the surplus is not. The main reason is the cost. Because the past few years we have experienced a lot of increasing in cost. First, okay, the risk factors, material costs, labor costs, rental costs, competitions, and some regulation changes. Okay, material costs. Based on the IMF report, material cost has been rising after the Lehman crisis and remain high from 2010 to 2014. Labor costs. Okay, our labor unemployment rate is, the Singapore unemployment rate is relatively low, but the vacancy available is getting higher and higher. More job is available but cannot be filled because our unemployment rate is very low because of our foreign labor policy. Third, competition. Number of new establishment, 210. There's 212 new establishment come into the market. 211, 283, 212, another 200 plus. So more and more establishment come into the market. Competition is getting more and more keen. That's why the F&B performance during this period is quite bad, as just now I showed. However, there's still positive factor. One, despite all the, just now what I said, dividend yield for F&B is relatively higher. Beta is lower. That means the stock price don't fluctuate as much. And the price to book ratio is relatively better than the sector average for the services sectors. So outlook for the F&B services sectors. First, economy. We know economy is slowing down. And yesterday GDP number come out, although we avoid a technical recession, but the situation is not so good. But despite the fact that the economy may be slowing down next year, as what I mentioned just now, the spending on the F&B could be relatively more stable. So don't have to worry so much about the economy. Okay, raw material costs. I extend the database for 2014 and 2015. You can see that raw material cost is coming down. This is derived from IMF. And secondly, rental. Rental index has been falling since beginning of this year because vacancy has come up. That means the F&B, one of their costs is rental. Besides material, labor, rental, and other admin costs, rental is one of the major factors. Since rental is coming down, although it will not affect now, but you can foresee that in the future, because normally when you lease a shop, it's a 3-year lease or a 5-year lease, or minimum you need a 2-year lease or something like that. So the rental renewal will take times. And this may not reflect in their current performance, but when their lease come for renewal, you will see that their cost may come down because the shop rental index has been coming down because of vacancy is going up. Okay, new establishment. Unfortunately, I only have the data until 2013. You see the sharp drop in the new establishment. You can't have a strong growth forever. Part of the growth period during this period is because there's a lot of shopping mall coming out during that period. Because of REITs, because of good yield from this shopping mall, they are coming out at very fast rate throughout this period. And it's getting slower and slower. So the number of new establishments per year should drop from here onward, and this will reduce some of the competitions in the F&B services sectors. Okay, company strategy. Okay, raw material cost, straight away the effect will come is shown. Based on BragTalk's, the cost of sale over revenue, it has been dropping in the past 3 quarters because they give a quarterly earnings. Japan Food, because it's a half-year earning, only lately they give a quarterly earnings. So I take a half year, the material cost has been causing the cost of sales to go down. Actually, that will improve their operating margin. Both companies actually operating margin improved in the last 3 financial periods. However, the tight labor market have not been solved, and rental yield remain high because just now I explained, you take time for the lease renewal to kick in. That's why you see the BragTalk's, the selling and the distribution expenses, mainly labor and rental costs remain high, fluctuate, and Japan Food still remain very high. Okay, strategy. Different companies use different strategy. Like BragTalk, they try to expand overseas. You can see that Singapore revenue has been growing, but on top of that, revenue from overseas, China, Hong Kong, and the rest of the world has been growing. This is BragTalk strategy. They try to expand overseas to get better returns and also insulate themselves from single market risk. Whereas Japan Food, everybody knows, is basically Singapore-based. They'll try to cut costs. If anybody visited Japan Food lately, they will know that they start using the iPad to order food. This will reduce the labor cost by a lot. And you can see that the cost of sales plus sales and distribution has actually start dropping. I think you'll continue to drop because the iPad things just started not long ago. I hardly visit, but I visit maybe a quarter or once or twice a year. But last time I visit is really using the iPad to order, and staff actually reduced quite a lot. So the staff cost will continue to go down, plus their centralized kitchen also put their costs down. So conclusion, total spending in F&B proportion to household spending decreases as the economy progresses. And as the economy becomes more and more developed, the amount of spending becomes more and more stable. Singapore F&B service sector has experienced stiff competition, higher raw material, labor, and rental costs in the past. But raw material already is, rental cost is likely to go down further, and competition is likely to be less in the future because more will be developed in the near future. Tight labor situation are likely to continue. There's no choice. Company have to think of way to reduce the labor dependence. And company in F&B sectors need to implement strategy to manage their tight labor situations. Okay, based on this, I think for F&B services sector, why we say about F&B services sectors is it's easier for everybody to understand because you go out and eat. If you go to BragTalk, you see the queue not there, or you go to Japan Food, the shop is very empty, then you better go and sell their companies. Yeah, it is very obvious one. Just like there's an incident, the BragTalk has one incident, the soya bean incident. Okay, when it happened, people worried, then start asking, how? So I was asked this question, I said, to answer, you find out yourself, you go to the toast box, is the queue still there or not? If the queue is still there, the share price drop, buy. But if the queue not there, then you better run. So that's why I think the F&B services sector is quite easy for people to feel. The numbers you have to go and analyze, but to feel the sectors is quite easy. Whether the shopping mall is a lot of people or less, whether you need to Don't go during all hour lah. You definitely can get a seat. During the peak hour, you see what is the queue, how is it? You wait for how long? Like Din Tai Fung always wait very long. I also don't know why. Yeah. So this is something that I think everybody can feel, and look. Besides feeling, look at the numbers, the PE, the price to book, the dividends, and when opportunity arrive because of certain thing happens, I think it's an opportunity to go in. Or when the share price is too high, it's also opportunity to take profits. Yeah. Okay.